Clown.
Hey,
Get out
Bart,
of here.
Bart, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I just had a few questions about your counter proposal for the challenge, if it's okay.
Absolutely, please do. Clarification is absolutely fine.
Yeah, so you said you wouldn't need to go into the individual studies if I posted a meta-analysis?
Yes, it's not going to be required because a meta-analysis will not establish the posit, and therefore the debate will be lost on that point alone. The positive claim made in the proposal was causality. There is an absolute clear definition of what causality is and what level of evidence is required to establish it. You will not be able to meet it.
Yeah, so is this statement...
Excuse me, I am speaking, which means you are not.
Mute your mic.
Are you still speaking?
Put some headphones on. Put some headphones on. Now, what was I saying, boys and girls, before I was so rudely interrupted?
Exactly.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the posit is lost before you get to the table because the word used was causality, which requires a certain level of evidence. It does not exist. The debate is lost before you sit down.
Are you still speaking?
I'm done now.
Okay. So, would this hold true if the individual studies were still well-controlled, well-powered, randomized controlled trials? Would you still not need to go through the individual studies in a meta-analysis?
Any meta-analysis or meta-regression brought to the table will fail on its own lack of merit as evidence for causality. And again, I remind you, the word offered was causality. This causes that. The evidence does not exist. I'm an expert in what the evidence contains, and I know what it contains, and I'm telling you that you will fail. You will lose. To use your good bubble buddy friend's very colourful adage, you will get cream pied in your anus.
Okay,
Are we clear?
I just want a little bit more clarity. So is this true even if the individual studies of the meta-analysis do meet your bar for
It's not my bar. The bar is set by scientific process, by the very design of the scientific process itself. These are not my rules. These are not my bars. These are what the bars are. Excuse me. These are what the bars are, whether you like it or not. I don't set the bars. I just discipline myself to remain within the construct of what I can prove and not prove. That's what the difference between a disciplined empiricist and a charlatan is. The answer to your question, in short, is yes. Any and every meta-analysis you bring to the table will fail, and I will point to it without breaking a sweat.
So do you think...
Excuse me, I don't know to go to any of the studies that underpin it.
It's a failure.
I can destroy any meta-analysis on its own lack of merit.
So do you
easily,
think
empirically. Go on.
Okay, so do you think and this would hold true even if the individual studies, to be clear, the individual studies do meet the bar, as you see it. That
it's not as I see it. The bar is what it is.
Okay, so fine. As the bar is what it is, this would still hold true. Is that correct?
Yeah. What I'm saying to you is, being an expert in the contents of the literature and knowing what the bar is for establishment of causality, I know absolutely that any meta-analysis or meta-regression brought to the table will fail catastrophically, and I will be able to point to it with ease, being the far superior logician.
So
I don't understand what's unclear about that. Are we now not clear still?
I just do you think meta-analyses and meta-regressions are just invalid for determining causality? Like, is that your position?
Absolutely they are, yes they are. That is my position.
Okay, all right, well, okay, so that's okay, interesting. Okay, so you think that taking the process of taking randomized controlled trials and putting it through a meta-analytic summation somehow it invalidates the inference?
Are you suggesting for one moment that anywhere in the literature there exists a remotely acceptable, well-powered, well-controlled, well-tenured study that establishes the posit, for example, that LDL-C plays a causal role in the development of cardiovascular disease?
I wasn't suggesting anything here. I was just asking a question for your epistemic standard.
Well, I'm asking you the question.
Oh, I think
personally.
Yes, I think there. Yeah, I think there are numerous.
Okay, you are therefore incompetent because no such study exists.
Okay, well, we can have that. Well, we can have that conversation in the debate. I'm just curious as to if you think
the only way that's going to happen is if my requirements are absolutely acquiesced to, because I do not need this debate. I do not need this discussion. It is not me asking for it. I am telling you what is going to be acceptable and what is not acceptable. I've been very, very clear. I've also posted a video today responding to the puerile and ridiculous video made by Isaac fucking Brown and basically my goodwill and my willingness to even entertain the concept is at very serious peril here, because basically what we've got actually is a couple of charlatans coming at me from a point of view of complete unconscious incompetence, not even understanding how fucking stupid they are, and coming at me from a position of disrespect. Anyone that wants to come at me from a position of disrespect is not going to get very far.
Okay.
I'm done.
Well, okay. I just wanted to know. I just want to know if the process of meta-analytically summating. This is the question which hasn't been answered. If you think the process of meta.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are some very, very serious issues with the conduct of epidemiologists within that field in terms of what they do to those data sets. But we can cover that during a discussion if that's going to be required.
This is not. It doesn't have to be epidemiology data in the data set. It's just a meta-analytic summation. The process. I'm asking if you think the process, the statistical process of meta-analytically summating. It doesn't have to be a single epidemiology study in what's being summated. Do you think that process somehow invalidates the data set in terms of the inferences that can be made?
No. Specific invalidating errors and or omissions of discipline with malice aforethought usually invalidate such meta-analytical processes. Okay. It's not the fact that the actual concept of summating meta-analytically is inherently flawed. It isn't. What's flawed is the conduct of the so-called scientists. Whoever's playing music, stop it.
Okay, so you don't think there's anything wrong intrinsically with the process of meta-analytically summating? You would say something along the lines of.
Go on.
Yeah, presumably you would say something along the lines of maybe the inclusion and exclusion criteria was set to stack the deck, or you would say the conduct of the researchers, which really goes into inclusion exclusion criteria usually, because that's typically how data can be stacked the deck in meta-analysis. Is that the kind of idea?
I have yet to see any meta-analysis published in the peer-reviewed literature regarding any aspect of human nutrition or indeed human cardiovascular pathophysiology by way of an association to any aspect of the lipoproteins. I'm yet to see any single example of a meta-analysis in any of those fields which does not invalidate itself because its authors have been ill-disciplined and have broken the rules.
Okay. And by
the way, does this count as a debate? Does this count as the debate happening? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I'm just trying to get clarity on your position. Okay,
that's very. Okay. Video response this morning. Have you not seen it?
I've seen bits. I've seen some of it. I thought it was
I think we should
entertaining.
watch
So
the whole thing. I
I've
think we should
watched.
watch.
I've watched it. Yeah,
I tell
I
you
haven't
what. I
watched
tell you
the.
what.
I haven't watched
Excuse
the
me.
entire thing.
Hang on. Stop. I would actually like to add another stipulation, and this is what it's going to be. If Dr. R.V. Bitterman speaks publicly on any platform with either Isaac fucking Brown or Richard fucking Burgess, either between this point in time right now, this second, and the end of any series of debates between myself and Dr. R.V. Bitterman, then that will be the end of the process. There will be no further words exchanged. That's
Okay.
an absolute. I will not bend on it.
Okay.
And
Well,
that stops.
Bart, you have to. Well, Bart, I got to understand that you're basically asking me to not talk publicly with my
No,
friends.
I'm not asking you. I'm not asking you anything. I'm telling you what's going to be required. You can speak privately to anybody you want in any way you want. Any public interaction between you and those two gentlemen between now and the end of any process between R.V. Bitterman and myself will end the process on the spot. End of discussion.
I mean, look, I'm not going to lie to you, Bart. I mean, it's you're essentially saying that if I speak publicly with my friends, then you are not willing to debate
Regarding
me.
no, with the specific caveat regarding myself or this process whatsoever. You can talk to them publicly about completely other topics. If there is any even remote allusion to this process or this moot point, we're done.
So if I speak to...
Basically what I'm telling you is that Isaac Brown and Richard Burgess are both gagged from this point regarding this issue if you want to go forward. Am I clear?
Yeah, you're clear. So if I speak to Isaac Brown or Richard Burgess...
Good. That is all on that note. What's next?
Okay, cool. So we can discuss the sure. So we can discuss meta analyses and in the debate, and if they have done some sort of invalidation, that's fine. Okay, cool. And then the other issue is the other reason I wanted more than 5 references is I wanted more than 5 references to test epistemic consistency. So I wanted more than 5 references to not just for the topic, but to say if you set a certain epistemic bar, then there may be entailments of that bar that you would have to bite the bullet on, essentially.
My standpoint from the outset, I think I've made absolutely patent, and it is this. The positive claim has been made by way of moot. So it's either LDLC or LDLP or ApoB, or it's some combination of those, or it's one of those at a time. I would prefer one of those at a time because I don't believe we can do justice to any more than one at a time. So that's fine. The bar, not my bar, the bar to support the claim as mooted is a well-designed, well-controlled, well-powered, well-tenured experimental interventional study with human beings as the subjects, or a single meta-analysis of a number of studies which meet all of those criteria. The problem is going to be that there are no studies that meet that criteria, not my criteria, that criteria. The word mooted is causality. It is inappropriate, it is scientifically ill-disciplined, and it is erroneous. The debate is lost before it begins. That's why people like Dr. R.V. Bitterman need to understand what their level of competence is and what the failings in their competence are. R.V.'s failings are he is not a competent empiricist or a competent scientist. He's a trained MD who specializes in dermatology. He should stay in his fucking lane.
Well, Bart, certainly you would wait a minute. Certainly you would acknowledge that if someone is in the field of dermatology, they can still make valid or invalid statements on other fields or other
Sure,
topics.
and the statements made on cardiovascular pathophysiology as that relates to lipoproteins that as mooted to me this week are erroneous, demonstrably so.
Well, that's just what we're going to have the debate on.
Well,
okay,
maybe.
so- yeah.
Maybe we'll have a debate.
Well, yeah.
Whether it occurs requires complete acquiescence from you at this point. You have no goodwill to play on. You say no to me on one single point I require, and we are done here. I don't give a fuck. I don't need you.
Can we still
You
be
need
friends?
me. Well, if you learn some basic fucking respect and cut your ties with those pathetic puerile fuckbags that you hang out with. Otherwise, I doubt it very much.
Well, I don't think I'm going to stop being friends with my friends, but I could still be respectful to you, Bart.
Well, that's something that you fucking haven't learned yet, pal. Perhaps
Okay.
you'll get better at it as we go on.
Well, yeah, I understand. Okay, so I understand. So you're not going to go into the individual studies with the meta-analyses, so we agree on that. You're
You
not
don't need
going to. Okay, and all right, cool. And if you do, then you will forfeit the debate. So that I would add that condition there. If you do go into the individual studies, if you're going to put that stipulation, that restriction, that's fine. But I will say that if you do actually go into the individual studies at that point, if you're going to hinge it on that, then you would forfeit the debate.
That would be fine because I wouldn't need to, because a study needs to stand on its own merits. So if, for example, you bring a study to me, V, and say this study says such and such, and I start asking you questions about it, and you are unable to answer those questions directly from the paper that is being referred to
Germany will lead
in
the
its
European.
own text, then you forfeit the debate.
Oh, well, wait a minute.
And
If that's
I would also add a stipulation to that if either one of us forfeits the debate on that rule, then that person should shut their channel down permanently as well as a penalty. How's that sound?
Wait. Well, I'm not going to shut my channel down permanently. But Bart, if I understand you correctly,
I think you just said no to one of my stipulations. That means we're done.
Well, if I accidentally do it, I still wouldn't shut my channel down permanently.
Then we're done.
Oh, okay.
Then we're done.
Can I still ask a few
Yeah.
questions just to get clarity on your position?
What's the point? We're done here, aren't we?
Well, I still want to. Well, I still
very
want to be
clearly-
done.
Excuse me. I told you very clearly you will acquiesce absolutely to every demand I make, or this will not be happening. And you just said no.
Well, I mean, I can still learn from you, Bart. Right? I mean, you're the senior.
Well, you could if you actually submitted your ego a little bit and realized the level of your own incompetence in this area, and take a hint from someone who's much more older and wiser than you. I'm telling you, the people you are associating with are doing you damage.
Bart, I'm listening.
I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. You need to get away from those two little fuckbags.
All right. So you're saying that the study stands on its own merits, and the meta-analysis will stand on its own merits.
Yeah. So if I ask you a question out of that meta-analysis that you bring forward and you can't answer it, then your study is invalid and the point is conceded.
Yeah, but I would need to. You don't realize that there could be a case where I would need to go to the individual studies from the meta-analysis in order to answer your question. Like if you ask a question about, this meta-analysis, what was the duration of the studies, for example? Like obviously that would require me to go into the actual studies, wouldn't it?
A decent meta-analysis
should
we'll give
report
you
it.
that.
I get it. Yeah, we'll give you.
Right. So if it doesn't, then it's not a decent meta-analysis and it's invalid.
Wait a minute. Hold on. If the meta-analysis, let's say the meta-analysis doesn't report something about the individual studies, but it's it's knowable. You can actually go into the individual studies and get the answer. Does that somehow invalidate the meta-analytics?
That doesn't really count as invoking. That doesn't really account as invoking a reference in my mind. If that's required, because you have to go and look at that study to find out what the answer is. Okay. However, The point would be at that point that the meta-analysis that you've brought forward is therefore lacking in discipline because it has failed to report the required information for you to check in the first instance by reading that paper and that paper alone about its assertions.
Sure,
It would
but
therefore qualify as poor level quality of so-called inference and would therefore be excluded, and then you'd be left flailing with nothing, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't think I would agree there. I mean, even if the meta-analysis wasn't astute in reporting all the relevant characteristics of the study, so long as you can know that information with investigation, I think the key inference that I'm concerned with is, at the end of the day, the ultimate meta-analytic summation, assuming everything else is everything else done is appropriate, and what inferences you could make there. And yes, it could be that it wasn't written up fully or astutely, but the key inference I would be concerned with is what you can draw from that in regards to causality for the debate proposition that we would be setting.
Well, I guess you'd have to wait for the day to find out how I'm going to play that, wouldn't you?
Sure, no, that's fine. I don't see how just not reporting a characteristic of a study would invalidate it. And then the other thing, okay, so just to be clear, if I go into the individual studies in a meta-analysis for information that's needed to answer your questions, then that doesn't count as an additional reference. Do I have that right?
No, that's just looking for the fact to underpin a given metric or such. So to give you a clear example by way of absolute open book fairness and clarity, you might say to me, I have this meta-analysis which suggests there is a 30% risk increase in this outcome given that lifestyle choice that you might make. And I might say to you, hey, great, so who were the subjects? You'd need to be able to tell me.
Yeah, and the only way I would be able to do that is to go into the individual study. Certainly, you would agree with that.
Certainly, of course. That's not a citation to the study. That's not what I mean as a citation. So, for example, if you give me a meta-analysis which is underpinned by 15 or 20 or however many contributing studies, to me, the inference is that all of those studies are at that point fair game because they underpin.
Yeah. Sure, and that's yeah.
But also what I've said repeatedly is we won't even need to go there because I will destroy any meta-analysis or meta-regression you put in front of me in 5 minutes or 10 minutes flat, anytime.
Okay, cool. So just to be clear, so if I cite a meta-analysis, then the individual studies in the meta-analysis would be considered fair game.
They have to be, surely.
Okay, fine. So then it would not count as a reference for me to use in any of those individual studies.
No, what I want to avoid is the sophistry of the Mick the little prick the vegan or fucking ridiculous Joel cunt splashing out, here's a paper, here's a strapline, here's a paper, here's a strapline, here's a paper, here's a strapline, without looking at the fucking thing. That will not be happening.
Well, no, I wouldn't do that to you, Bart. If anything, I give. Look, I have issues with the 5 reference limit, but here's what I can tell you: any study that I will cite to you, I will have read. Any of the relevant points that I make, I will have read, and I'm not. It's not going to be random. I'm not just going to gish gallop you. I'm not going to just spam you with data. I'll give you the relevant data. I do think that I would need over 5 references to do it, especially to do it justice.
Why?
Test that. Yeah, because I need references to test epistemic consistency. If one wants to set the bar at a given level, or even I know you said it's the bar. I get it. I
go on. Hang on. I know I'm butting in on you, and I know I don't want you to do it to me, and I'm doing it to you. But it's important here. Okay. Why do you need consistency? Evidence is evidence. lack of evidence is like what I'm trying to get through to you people is this. Science is a dichotomous, positivist endeavor. The outcomes for any given read are a 1 or a 0. There is no grey in science. There is a bar that has been set. In most fields of science, it's 95% confidence of a 1. Either you've got a 1 or you've got a 0.
Well, to answer your question, Bart, the reason I'm looking for epistemic consistency is because I would like to. First of all, I want to avoid logical contradictions. I'm not a dialetheist and I'm not a trivialist either. So, if I want to say that,
Sophist. Sorry, go on.
yeah. So I want to avoid logical contradictions. I'm not a dialetheist, and I'm not a trivialist. And so I want to have a bar which I could apply consistently unless I have a relevant symmetry breaker. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's pretty agreed upon. And if you do you see anything wrong with that, Bart?
I do see that differently, and I'll tell you why I see that differently.
Okay.
At the end of the day, what you would need to convince me of your moot is you would need to apply the scientific discipline that's required to establish your moot. And the word that is absolutely pivotal in your moot is causal. That means you need, hang on, that means you need specific things to meet the requirement to make that claim in a valid way. Otherwise, you're just making noise. You're making an invalid claim. And as soon as it can be established that your claim is invalid, given that it is you who has made the positive claim, you therefore have to, by the rules of debating, admit that you have been defeated and that your posit has been defeated and that your moot must be rejected. Because there's either a 1 or there's a 0. I'm inviting you to bring your 1 to the table so that I can then teach you how it is that you have misinterpreted that as a 1 when in fact what it is a 0. It's going to be a learning experience for everybody that sees it because they will see how an actual scientist thinks, how an actual empiricist considers data sets, and how he deals with someone who is simply not competent to interpret the data.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you think that there's not. Are you disagreeing with me in saying there's not a need for consistency? That we can.
No, proof is unequivocal. Proof is you can establish. Excuse me. Proof is you can establish your posit without question. Failing that bar, you lose the debate.
Do you think there's a need for epistemic consistency?
I'm not sure I understand the underpinnings of why you would ask me such a thing.
Oh, I want to see. Well, it's because you disagreed when I said that. The reason, I mean, in this conversation, you asked me why I would need to test epistemic consistency, and I said I don't want to affirm logical contradictions. That I don't want to. And then you said you disagreed with me. You said that you differ with me on that.
I think the problem here is clear. I think the problem is that what you failed to do when I explained this to you a few minutes ago was instead of thinking about what your answer to what I'm saying is going to be and trying to be clever, what you should actually do is still your mind, open your ears and listen to what I'm saying to you because the answer to your question is in there. Okay? My mother used to say to me, and she still does, bless her soul, that I was born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and there's a reason for that. And I think that's something you need to learn. So let me teach it to you here. Listen to me. This is very, very clear. The moot says causality. That is a positive claim you are required to establish with unequivocal evidence. Unequivocal evidence does not require reinforcement from elsewhere. Produce the one paper that establishes your moot, or you lose the debate. That is the invitation. Can
Do
I
you
be
care
any
about-
clearer?
Well, I don't think you've answered the question still. Do you care about consistency or not?
I don't need consistency. Unequivocal
Oh,
proof
okay.
is unequivocal proof, isn't it?
Do you
And if
not
unequivocal proof has been deployed, then another look at the same will produce the same. So you don't need to cite it. Cite any one source of evidence that establishes your posit unequivocally, and thus you win the debate.
would you say
Spoiler,
that you're
boys and girls. Excuse me. Spoiler, boys and girls. It does not exist. Avi will not be able to bring it to the table because it is not in existence. Ergo, Avi has lost the debate before he sits down. The reason for that is because he chose the moot and he chose the word causal. He made an error. Therefore, he will lose and he will get spanked and everyone will learn something. That's the outcome of this discussion when it occurs.
would you say your position is a logically consistent position?
Ask me a question that makes sense and I'll answer it.
What about the question doesn't make sense?
Logically consistent with what?
Yeah, by logically consistent, I mean, not affirming contradictions, so true contradictions, which would be P and not P. So
Try in English. Try using English. English works well for most people. What do you mean by logically consistent? Because consistent means with something else. So what's the other thing that I need to be consistent with to be logically consistent?
Not affirming a contradiction. So not affirming a proposition and its negation.
Okay, you just said the same thing again, which was just gobbledygook.
Okay, I can. Yeah, sure. So a proposition is a
Speak
truth-apt. So a proposition is a truth-apt statement. So it's a statement that can be
Again,
true or false.
gobbledygook. Gobbledygook. We don't speak Isaac fucking Brown gobbledygook here. We speak English, most of us. English would be appreciated.
Okay, so a statement can be true or false,
Or neither.
and or not. Oh, yeah. So I'm talking about the specific categories of statements that can be true or false. So statements that's what I mean when I say truth-apt, Bart. So when I say truth-apt, all I mean are statements that can be true or can be false. They have a truth value. Now, a contradiction is affirming the proposition, which is a statement that can be true or false, and its negation, which is the other truth value at the same time.
Sophistry and more sophistry. Nonsense, gobbledygook, and bollocks. I'm an empirical scientist. We are talking about a scientific moot point here. You have made a positive claim regarding causality. You are now required to support your claim with the evidence that establishes that. You will fail. You are nonetheless invited to attempt it. You will require 5 or fewer references for each one of those 3 posits you have suggested to me. You will acquiesce within 7 days. You will not speak publicly on any platform to either of those 2 gentlemen I have spoken about previously in this discussion, or the deal is off. Are we clear?
I'm clear on what your terms are. It seems like you still can't answer this question, though, if your position is consistent or not.
I'm not here to answer your fucking questions. I am here to defend a position which doesn't really even need defense. And the position is R.V. Bitterman has made an error of judgment. R.V. Bitterman has suggested a moot which is demonstrably wrong, false, and incorrect. And it's time he learned his bloody lesson.
Wrong, false, and incorrect.
Is your position consistent, Bart?
There are 2 people speaking in this discussion right now, and only 2 people. Anyone else who wants to get involved in this right now, at this point in time, will find themselves banhammered. Am I clear, everybody? No fucking around in here. Right, go on, sorry.
Yeah, so I don't understand what was difficult about what I said about consistency. So
It's just nonsense and sophistry, and it's a misdirect from the point at hand, which is you've made a mistake, haven't you? You've taken on more than you can fucking chew. You've been disrespectful to one of your seniors and betters in a massive way. You are now coming to me cap in hand. Please have a discussion with me. I'm telling you what's going to be required, and I'm outlining what's going to happen. In that discussion, it's up to you to suck it up and take that on the chin, and then you and all your fucking retarded followers will learn something about true actual science. Or you say, I'm not interested in that, in which case you fuck right off for all time and none of us give two fucks. Am I clear?
Sure. So just to be clear, you won't answer the question of whether your position is logically consistent.
I am not engaging in your sophistry, and I'm not engaging in smoke and mirrors. I am not going to be diverted from the point at hand, which is you've made a mistake, haven't you, Avi? You've got it wrong in a big way. You're completely out of your fucking depth.
So you won't answer.
Have I not already been clear on this? Have I not already been very, very clear on this topic? You're out of your depth.
Understood. Okay. So look, I mean,
yes, you are.
All right.
Bring your fucking references to the table. You have less than you have less than 7 days to comply. You're on the clock. Send me your fucking references. We'll set up a date. We'll try and find a platform that's acceptable and a time frame that's acceptable for everybody, and we can make this happen if you want, given the stipulations that I have already been clear about. And if you want to make the date far into the future, that's a long, long time before you can talk to any of your buddies publicly on public media, isn't it? Yes, it is. So you'll need to think about that too, won't you, buddy? Yes, you will.
Bart, do you realize that if a position is not logically consistent, if it affirms a true contradiction, then on classical logic, it affirms all propositions?
Do you have a problem with hearing, or is it thinking, or is it both?
Well, I'm just trying to give you a reason for why.
Did you not fucking hear what I just said for the last several minutes? Did you not fucking hear me? Was I not completely fucking clear with you?
I understand. I'm just trying to persuade you on why one should care about logical consistency.
Fucking anything, Avi. You are a disrespectful little child who needs to get his ass spanked publicly so that you will learn your fucking lesson. You are an incompetent hack who is completely outside of his lane, talking about shit you know fucking nothing about to a senior fucking lecturer in fucking cardiovascular pathophysiology, buddy. You are completely out of your depth. Bring your evidence that it's otherwise, or fuck right off. Are we clear?
Bart, all I'm trying to do is trying to persuade you about why one should care about logical consistency and not affirming contradictions. That's all.
I have answered your question. And I have dealt with your sophistic nonsense already.
You actually haven't answered my question.
I have by dismissing it out of hand. I will not engage in that nonsense. You talk about the moot at hand, which is a scientific question, and the scientific question is, have you made an error in your proposed moot? The answer is yes, you have, because you used the word causality, therefore you have lost before we even begin.
Do you think dismissing a question is answering a question?
I'm dismissing the question because it is completely beneath me. I will not engage in your sophistry. I will not.
You've answered the question.
I am speaking, which, as I have already told you, means you are not. It means you are listening. I will not engage in your nonsense. I will not be dissuaded or swayed from my absolute purpose here, which is to point to your error. You are wrong.
Are you still
and
speaking?
I will do it publicly as soon as you acquiesce to my demands. Absolutely, you must roll over and wet on yourself. I have no interest in speaking to you otherwise. You will come to me cap in hand, you will show adequate respect, and you will learn something, as will all of your fucking retarded followers who think that your plant-based diet is a good idea and that your pseudo-scientific sophistry is so very impressive. It is not. It's fucking nonsense. It's childish. It's pseudo-intellectual bullshit of the highest order. We are here to deal with the facts. And the facts at hand are very clearly scientifically established. And the very clearly scientifically established facts here are you don't have a fucking leg to stand on.
Oh, Bart, are you still speaking? Hello? So, Bart, you said you answered my question, and then you said you answered it by dismissing it. I just want to know if you think dismissing a question constitutes answering a question.
Who thinks I should end this discussion right now?
I do. Does this get no fucking where,
So,
sir?
just to be clear, you can't answer if your position is consistent or not. That's
This
what
person
we're doing.
This person to whom I'm speaking is obviously severely mentally retarded, and he's just shown it again and again and again and again because he cannot understand basic English, basic logic, and he cannot accept and he cannot accept that he is completely unable to control this situation in the way that he wants to because he's dealing with someone who's by far his superior.
So you can't answer if your position is consistent or not. That's yikes. I mean, Bart. I mean, look. I mean, when someone is asking if your position is logically consistent or if it doesn't affirm true contradictions, and you can't even answer that. I mean, you don't think that speaks to anything about your position or about your ability to answer that or your ability to defend your position?
You've made an error, haven't you, Harvey? Let's get back to the point. You've made an error, haven't you? You've used the word causality completely inappropriately. You're going to get spanked publicly on it as soon as you fucking front up to that. You're going to be made to look like the fucking schoolboy that you are. That's what's at moot here, not your opinion on any matter of logic or anything to do with logic, because frankly, son, you don't know fucking anything about logic.
So I didn't appreciate an answer to that question. So the question was...
I don't give a fuck what you appreciate, pal.
Well, did you answer the question?
Can I just ask, is there anybody else here who's having difficulty understanding what I'm saying here? Because I think I'm being pretty clear, aren't I?
No, you're being perfectly clear.
I don't.
Yeah, I thought so.
Well, if someone else thinks he's answered the question.
Question's irrelevant.
The question is completely irrelevant. That's exactly my point.
Question.
The question
You think
is completely beneath all of us because it's completely irrelevant and has nothing to do with the point at moot.
Do you think whether someone's position?
You know what? Let's make this really, really clear. Change topic right now, or end of discussion. That's it. Done.
Okay, so you want me to change the topic of whether your position has any logically consistency whatsoever?
Okay,
any
discussion finished. There we go. There it is. Discussion end. Goodbye.
Bye, Avi.
All right. Well, listen. Thanks for talking. Bart. Well,
Bye. Fuck off now.
See you, loser.
See you later.
All right, Bart.
Bye.
Well, look,
Avi.
take care. All right. Well, listen. Listen. Can I?
No, you can't do anything else. Down here now. We're finished. Bye.
No. That's fine.
Can I
that's
ask
fine.
Abby a question?
That's okay. That's totally fine. Well, listen, Bart. Thanks. Listen. Hey, wait. I just want to thank Bart for the discussion. Listen, Bart. Truly, I do want to look. I know that you don't really like me that much. So I want.
Yeah, good.
No, I'm. No, fair enough. Like you don't have to like me. That's fine. But I do want to thank you for having the chat with me, and I thank you for your time.
That's my pleasure. Have a great day.
Yeah,
right,
I'd be down to also.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Avi must stand for absolute vicious ignorance.
Wasn't it? Wasn't that incredible? Wow.
No,
yeah. I thought that I would just quickly wreck you, Bart, if you're down to explain your argument against the soundness of NTT. Are you
Somebody
gonna ban me? You gonna ban me, or are you gonna ban me? You little bitch.
No
No argument. No argument, Bart. No argument. Logician, but doesn't know. Logician doesn't know what a contradiction is.
Logician and doesn't know what a contradiction is? Logician doesn't know what a contradiction is, eh?
Hey Bart, you blazing idiot. Hey Bart, you blazing idiot. Do you have an argument that can actually name the traits unsound? You have an argument, buddy?
I have one. Immediately.
I'd love to listen. Bart. Do you want to actually? You want? What a fucking idiot.